So today we are now looking at question 3 for the English language paper 1 exam. Now, a lot of the times from my experience, I've noticed that students can get mixed up with this question. Quite often, students mistake structure for the layout or just end up describing events that took place in the extract, and that is not the objective of this question. Look guys, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe as I'll be releasing more content like this in the near future. If you have any requests, leave them down below in the comments section. Also, if you know of anyone that can benefit from this, then do share this video around guys, as this is essentially what this channel is created for. So let's now get into it. Firstly, let's try and understand what structure is, as there's no real point to answer and waffle through a question when you don't actually know what you're talking about. So when it comes to structure, we are looking at the entire source, and generally speaking, we are focusing on how it develops and transitions. So the features to pay particular attention to are how ideas, characters, and themes develop as we read through it. So let me elaborate on this. Usually sources are pre-selected to ensure that there's a gradual transition taking place, i.e. usually you'll notice the writer talking about the setting and then switching it to a character, or switching between different characters or characters and settings. Your task for this question is to talk about these switch ups and try and explain why the writer has chosen to do this. I tend to use this analogy of a director. So imagine you're shooting a film. In order to make it an enticing and an engaging story, you will be switching camera positions. So for instance, for certain scenes, you'll be zooming in, and for others, you'll be zooming out. For a different scene, you may go back in the past to show something that has taken place there, or something that goes on to affect the character in the future. The point I want you to take away from this is that this question is all about that shift in focus, meaning every time you switch up in your movie, it's done so for a deliberate effect that it has on the audience. And this is what you want to be plucking out from the text and then explaining your reasoning as to why the writer may have done this in their particular extract. There are many structural techniques out there, and some of them are actually quite interchangeable, meaning that they have differing names but essentially they do the same thing. So these are some of the ones that I've selected for students to look out for. You've got zooming in and out of characters, backgrounds. You've got panoramic views, changing perspectives, i.e. a shift in perspective. You've got the narrative, shifts in time, time lapses, shift in mood or tone, dramatic tension. Look out for things like dramatic irony, gradual changes, flashbacks, foreshadowing, forewarning, references to characters. Look out for things like not mentioning particular character names or making certain characters more prominent in the description. Staggered chronological order, cyclical, paragraphing. Look at the pace, tone, and dialogues that take place. So ask yourself, what effect does this create? How is it leaving the reader feeling? The other thing I want to mention is the plot graph. I think this can be quite relevant and a reference that you could be making in your response. This alone doesn't answer the entirety of the question, but it's a good reference to have, and it demonstrates your understanding, why it can help you cash in on some good marks. So we have the introduction or the exposition, and it's all about introducing the text and staging the background. Look out for the way the writer is describing the setting. Then you have what you call the trigger incident, which sets up the plot in motion. Usually it's some course of action or a decision that makes the protagonist change the course or change their lives in some, by taking some form of action. You've got the rising action. There could be supplementary plot lines or parallel narratives taking place here side by side. All of this builds up suspense that leads to that ultimate climax. Moving on, we reach the climax, which of course is a turning point in the story. This is the peak of tension. Try and understand that not all stories or extracts follow this pattern. This is just a general outline, and again, do not be using this entire model to answer your question. So don't be saying that the writer introduces and then moves on to onto the rising action, then the climax, etc. Instead, just make references to certain parts of this model when it's quite vivid and clear that this is what is unfolding. So looking at this particular piece, now a rough guideline for the start could follow something like this. The writer begins by introducing us to Zoe and an interaction of the setting. By giving us a panoramic view, gives us the reader an insightful imagery of how serene and idyllic this moment is, which is in stark contrast to how dramatically it ends. The tone is also quite slow and unhurried, as we are left to mesmerize with our protagonist. However, following this tranquil scene, the pace suddenly quickens up once the couple have had a dialogue. The dual perspective of the characters taking different directions, also combined with elements of foreshadowing, whispers of skis displaced by a rumble, begins to intrigue the reader. The juxtaposition depicts this turning point that is about to emerge in this story. So now, to wrap up on question 3, what you want to be doing is, number 1, make sure you make references to structural techniques as opposed to language feature, which many students get caught up doing. Number 2, ensure you make references to show that the extract develops. This could be a shift in focus, shift in mood or tone or even perspective. Number 3, make references to how this would impact the audience. Would it make them surprised, intrigued? Would it leave them wanting more? Are they entertained? Do they end up questioning things or learn a message? You want to make a perceptive comment about this. And number 4, again, be very mindful of the time here. This is another 8-mark question, so don't be overspending your time on this question. Be direct and to the point and get those features in right away. Again, you're aiming for around 2 solid paragraphs. So I hope that you can now go away and implement this in your response. If this was helpful in any way, make sure to subscribe to the channel and also do drop a comment down below. On that note, my name is Amin and I will catch up with you another time.
Trying to put him in the worst mood. P1 cleaner than the church shoes. Really point to just to hurt them. All red lamps to tease them.